when I came out, I had this predetermined identity that I was always going to feel like I didn't belong because I came along, I was conceived in life unexpectedly. So that identity that I adopted when I was not even born, I came out of the womb with that identity. I lived it elementary school, high school, college, and through my first marriage until like I said, a few years ago, found that that was the root cause and looked back through my life and realized that all the way through it, I was always fighting this identity of that you don't belong, you shouldn't be here. But it was challenging every day.
Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Beitz. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. My guest today, Bob Wischer, is a relationship engineer. As the founder of Men Becoming Better Men Coaching and the host of the Men Becoming Better Men podcast, Bob serves as a guiding force for men who feel lost and disconnected by empowering them with tools and support to engineer a life they love, full of joy, meaning, and connection. After his life was upended by an extremely painful divorce that nearly destroyed his relationship with his children, Bob decided to dedicate himself to learning how to systematically re-engineer his life and transform his mindset to create powerful and transformational results. What he discovered in the process changed his life forever. Now with 4 children and happily remarried, Bob's journey from despair to fulfillment has become a beacon of hope and a testament to the transformative power of self-reflection, accountability, coaching, and personal responsibility. He's dedicated his life to helping men create lasting change through rediscovering their purpose, enhancing their relationships, and embracing their authentic selves. Bob, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Now, I've got quite a few questions here from your bio and things that I've heard. But first of all, something that you put down that you wanted to talk about was men's connection and integrity and purpose. And for me, with intuition, I can see all of those things being enhanced when a man allows help to come from what I would call unseen forces. So I'm just wondering, what's your interpretation of intuition?
Well, as a Christian believer, it's the Holy Spirit to me.
Mm-hmm.
I know he's working behind the scenes all the time. As someone who's saved and has been baptized by and believes in Jesus, I know the Holy Spirit resides in me. That's the gift that I get as being a believer. So, and it's funny because I haven't really accepted him that long ago. It's only been like 5 years. And I didn't find him until I was about 50 years old. But the funny part is I think he's been with me all along because a lot of the things that have transpired in my life have been, very, very spiritually driven. The path that I've been on, the paths that I've taken, decisions I've made, and I've always kind of had that kind of that intuitive feel for, maybe the right thing to do or the, right place at the right time, things like that.
He'll never leave you or forsake you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. And for me, I in my younger years, attended church a lot, a real lot. But as you said, it's like you feel it was already always there. Like it was there.
Yeah.
You possibly chose to tap into it, maybe not as much then. You weren't listening as much, etc.
Right.
Things like that. And for me, it's an unseen force that's there that likes us and
Yeah,
wants to help us, and
exactly.
and that sort of thing. So it's yeah, we can look at it from many different angles, and it's I think once we depart this earth, we may all get a bigger picture of the whole scene, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. It's beyond our current, capabilities to fully
comprehension. Yeah,
understand. Yeah, for
yep. Yeah, I
sure.
don't think we have any comprehension at this point of what's to come.
No, no,
It
and I,
just
yeah, I think
it's
it's going to
promised to
get,
be good.
yeah, it's going to be bigger and better, etc.
Yeah.
So, so then talking then about with men connection, integrity, and purpose. Oh, excuse me. How do you, like with your coaching and things you do, like those three things, connection, integrity, and purpose, like where do you see those fitting into like helping men's lives?
Oh, I mean, integrity just for starters is huge because I know for many decades of my life I wasn't living in it very much. Um, I wasn't being honest with myself first and foremost. From my physical health, knowing that I want to be healthy, but I wasn't honest with myself and what I was doing and how I was going about it. I'd say, I want to be in shape and I want to lose weight or whatever it is, or be fit, but you know, having pizza night with a family and eating half to three quarters of a pizza is not being in integrity with yourself. Um, then relationship wise, with people, in the office being, um, and this wasn't necessarily my problem. This is just an example, but being truthful with other people when you have you owe a deliverable to somebody and they're expecting it to be able to tell them, yeah, I'll have it to you by Thursday at 3 o'clock, and Thursday at 3 o'clock comes and goes, and that person didn't appear with the whatever it was, the deliverable. That just those kind of things drive me crazy because you can't give your word like that to somebody and then just inexplicably ignore it. And I think that's a lot of the things that men do, especially in relationships. So, honey, wife says, will you take out the trash? Oh, sure, I'll take it out as soon as the game's over. Well, the game ends, and then the next game starts, and you're halfway through the next game, and or you're going and doing something else, and the wife's sitting there stomping her foot. Why don't you take the trash out? Things like that. That's what I've learned through talking to a lot of men is that's a root cause of why women leave men in divorce at a much higher percentage than men leave women in divorce. It's because the women get so tired of listening to a man make a promise, break a promise, not follow through on a promise, renege, ignore, whatever. And that's when, as someone, as a woman, they're programmed mostly to protect, right? And they're in their way of protecting, they just step in and do things, and then they get angry, and then they get resentful, and then it's a snowball effect. And that's why women go looking for other men who they think are more in integrity with themselves, and leave the guy that's been lying to her behind for and take his kids and take half of his money and take whatever else. And it's not I'm not bashing on women. They're smart to do that because they're with a low impact man. But as a high impact man who is integrity with himself, with his wife, with his kids, with his employer, with everybody he deals with, that to me that's the gold standard. That's what we all should be striving for every single day, not this, yeah, honey, I'll take out the trash, and never do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. No, I hear you. And I haven't been down the divorce route, but you have. And so I'd like to, and there may be men listening who haven't been down that route either, but to spur them to action, I'd like to talk to you about that. And I'm just curious the feelings and the emotions you were going through just before, during the divorce, and after? Like how, like was that three different stages or
Oh yeah.
okay?
Well, well, I don't know. It's a question. I know the first one. The first answer before was depression.
So
Um,
and so just to define the length of time for before for you, is this days, weeks, months,
Years.
years before? Okay.
Couple, at least a few years before my divorce, I was battling depression. I would come home from work, sit down at the dining room table with the family, and we'd start eating dinner, and I would stare down like this at my plate, and my ex-wife and the kids are there, and they're talking about their day, or they're whatever, talking about whatever, and I became barely functional. I was under such pressure and stress and work, and the marriage was dissolving, and I had a lot of things going on in my own head, things that, childhood wounds that I hadn't resolved, and it just became very, very overwhelming. And it wasn't until I actually started, taking some medication that I actually got enough clarity to realize some of the root causes. And one of them was just unhappiness in my marriage. I'm not a victim of that, taking out the trash scenario I talked about earlier. I filed for divorce because it's just we were not compatible from day one. That's the long story, the short story version of it. Um, and it was just time for me to leave, and that is actually the only thing that kept my sanity. So that's the before. The during the divorce, extremely difficult because um on well, fortunately for me, unfortunately for the situation, I started dating pretty quickly and found an amazing woman, and we started dating, and as soon as my ex found out about that, the divorce got really bad. So I went from depression to basically defending every piece of my life to try to at least get some time with my kids and not, lose all of the equity I had built in my home and all the other things that we had. So that was the during, and then the after. Um, it took me probably a year or so, even after the divorce was over, um, to really get to a place of recovery where I didn't need the medication anymore, and I slowly weaned myself off of that. But as that time went by, I had some unresolved issues, even still at that point, that I had to resolve for myself, which I didn't really take care of for, I think it was another 2 years after that when I finally got those issues resolved, and was able to truly, become I'm becoming now, which is, a believer in Christ, and someone who wants to help and support other men that are either going through or heading towards or have been through, and the things that I've been through, and just want to help them out, because I firmly believe that if I had had someone in my corner when I was going through all that, it would have been a hell of a lot easier. But I didn't. I My friends that I had uh, prior to being married the first time, kind of all got distanced through the 19 years I was married. All the friends that I made during the marriage, she won in the divorce. And so I really had, when I started going through the process, I had no one.
Mm.
And it was an extremely hard battle. And I, I, I don't wish it on anybody. And I'd like to walk beside men that are going through it and just support them any way I can.
All right, so let's go back to pre there. You gained clarity from medication, which is great that there was something to help you through it. Have you ever thought, or do you have any thoughts of, was there a time before it got real bad where you could have had clarity of mind another way without medication? And I'm not saying there was a way, but I'm just curious.
Probably not, just because of the incompatibility that was happening. Um, my just to frame it in a love languages perspective, our love languages were completely disconnected. What she needed, I wasn't my strength to give, and what I needed wasn't her strength to give. So we were constantly, going in opposite directions. So it just got worn down. We were both worn down really by the end, and um, yeah,
So,
it really what it really wasn't meant to be. Well, it was meant to be because we have two amazing kids. They're doing amazing things in their lives, and um, they're gonna have amazing, successful lives and careers. So from that perspective, it was amazing. It's just that the two of us were not compatible with each other. So
yeah,
we either in any case, even if I had the clarity, it's still there was so much missing that it
yeah.
wouldn't have a
So,
difference.
yeah. So you've learnt a lot about life.
Well,
You've
about
been through,
myself, really,
yeah,
what I like, what I want, and what I need,
mm,
and knowing to ask for what I need when I need it.
yeah. And as
And a
you,
lot of a lot of men don't do that. A lot of men will just suffer in silence. I'm
yeah,
fine.
yeah, yeah. You mentioned earlier, like one little bit there was you started to realize, or you didn't realize, and now realize there was stuff in from your childhood that
Mhm.
dragged over into adulthood that wasn't dealt with and festered or whatever. And so I guess it's good that you've realized that.
Mhm.
Um, do
Best
you
thing that
think,
ever happened to me.
sorry?
Best thing that's ever happened to me is getting
Yeah,
clarity around that.
yeah. So do you think as a child, if there were intuitive men around you that could have picked up on what was going on with you and put
Mm,
something in place to help you deal with that, that you'd have come
I,
out of your and then maybe you'd come out of your childhood differently? Do
yeah.
you think you may have had more clarity to and I'm like you said, you've got two awesome children from that union.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't want to take away from them at all and the awesomeness that they are currently bringing to this planet.
Yeah, right.
But it's like maybe things might have been different. I don't
Yeah.
know. Had you been
No,
able
I'm
to,
with you. I'm
yeah,
with you, but I don't think it would have been possible. Um, because now that I know the root cause, um, I don't think anybody, the only person that would have been able to see it happen would have someone that would have had to been highly educated in infant child psychology. Um, the short story of it is, I was conceived before my parents were married, and a lot of the situation that surrounded them getting pregnant prior to being married was an energy that I was absorbing into my subconscious memory, my subconscious brain at that pre-birth age was taking that negative energy that was constantly coming in surrounding the family at that point in time, made me, when I came out, I had this predetermined identity that I was always going to feel like I didn't belong because I came along, I was conceived in life unexpectedly. So that that identity that I adopted when I was not even born, I came out of the womb with that identity. I lived it elementary school, high school, college, and through my first marriage until like I said, a few years ago, found that was the root cause and looked back through my life and realized that all the way through it, I was always fighting this identity of that you don't belong, you shouldn't be here. And until I got my head around that, my life my life was good, but it was challenging every day to get out of bed and do the things that I needed to do for myself or my family or whatever.
yeah. and what I'm hearing is awesome that you've come to recognize that, and just the fact that you've voiced that over the last couple of minutes for the men listening, because some
Mhm.
of them may think, oh, yeah, like that may be, yeah, I can relate to that. And yeah, you've just sown a seed. You've dropped a pebble in the pond and the ripples are
Yeah.
going out. And some men are listening to that. And the fact that you've woken up to that and realized that that's what's going on. And, like our journey in this life isn't always about, unicorns and rainbows and lollipops.
That's for sure.
Because, lollipops will eventually decay your teeth. And,
Right.
and the unicorn may eventually get sick of you and buck you off. And,
Yeah,
and
right.
so, we're here to experience things and do things.
Yeah.
And you're here to enjoy your two awesome children who came from that first
Mhm.
marriage.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's your intuition's coming through now,
Yeah.
realizing and then you're now passing that on to other younger generations of men your age, men older than you, who, and I think, you know, we've come here to fulfill a purpose, to learn things, to grow, to do. And it doesn't matter whether we pass away at 30 or 130, as long as we hit that. And even if we take a long time to get those lessons, like my dad passed away 2 years ago at 92. And I know
Mm.
in that final week of his life, because he was a stubborn old bastard, I'd tell you, in that last week of his life, I could see him finally giving in to a couple of things
Mm.
and accepting some help. And I mean, he was forced to, because he
Yeah.
physically
Well, yeah.
really
You couldn't
declined
do
in that last week or two. And he was in a nursing home for the last year,
it.
and he hated anyone coming in the door. And mum was in an adjoining room for a while, and she would go to like fill her glass for the water from the water jug they'd bring, and he'd say, "Don't drink that." And she's like, "Why?" And he goes, "Because if you drink it, they'll come in and fill it up again. Like, and we don't want them in here." Like, like
So we'll just die of thirst, so they don't come
yeah,
in here.
that, yeah. So, but I could see in that last week in the visits, like he had to surrender and he had to give in and accept help in a few areas, and like he finally got it just before it was time to go.
Yeah.
And yeah, and in all that, I had and people will think what I'm about to say is weird, but I would say most people listening have not had this experience, so they don't know what I mean. I had the pleasure and joy of actually being in the room with him when he passed. And my
Mm.
wife was there as well. And in the following hours, we sort of were talking to each other. And I said to her, because she's, concerned for me because it was my dad and how you going? And then after a couple of hours, I intuitively had the thought to say to her, "How are you doing?" And she
Mm.
said, "I actually feel privileged to have been in the room when your dad went,
Mm.
because and it was the first time for both of us to be with someone when they
Yeah.
passed." And I will say to anyone out there, it's a very peaceful moment. It's an enjoyable moment. And it was like I would have never pictured it how it was. It was,
Mm.
yeah, and my mum's still going. She's very healthy. Her memory's gone. Like she's about to turn 93 in a week or two. And I hope to be with her, if things happen when she goes, because it's just this peaceful moment, and you sense it. Like Dad had been asleep for probably 12 hours before he went, but we knew, and it just he was gone. And yeah,
Mm.
so it's but like he got some of those lessons, because he couldn't work out why he was here for the last 20 years. He was trying to drink himself to death with rum,
Mm.
and drink 3 bottles a week. Uh, but he had lessons to learn. He needed to be here for some things. And I think it's part of why I'm trying to put this message out, is if we can teach men to tap into this benevolent force on that we don't see is they're trying to help us.
Yeah,
We can simplify things a bit, make it easier,
yeah,
and definitely help others. So yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So, are there any particular times in your life where you've got a memory of like experiencing intuition or synchronicities that might be interesting?
Hmm. The moment, my intuition is not helping me.
No, that's cool. No worries at all. Let me think.
Um, oh, I'm sure there's something. That's nothing's popping into my head at the moment.
Yeah, no worries at all. All right, so we'll take a different little tack here, and I'm just curious. Something else I have very real in my life. I, I'll ask you, what's your biggest fear?
Biggest fear. Hmm. Oh, it used to be not having enough money, but I've actually been doing a lot of work on that. So, um, biggest fear right now. It's funny. I just heard this question like 10 or 15 minutes before we got on the podcast, and I thought of it then too. It's like, what am I afraid of? And it honestly, because like I said earlier, because I'm my Christian beliefs, I don't really think I'm afraid of anything anymore. I'm definitely not afraid of death. Um, like I said, I'm not afraid of running out of money. Money is abundant, money is everywhere. Money's gonna come back. It's gonna go out, it's gonna come in, it's gonna go out, it's gonna come in. It just ebbs and flows like energy. Um, I'm not afraid of being unloved because my wife is amazing. She loves me. Um, you know, there's not a whole lot, I found my purpose. I used to be afraid of not knowing what my purpose was until I found it. Um, and since I found it and I've been living into it for the last 5 or 6 years, it's, everything's been amazing. I'm still creating new ways to bring men together. For example, I was telling the guys this morning, my workout group, we have I'm guessing F3 hasn't made it down to Australia yet, but it's a group called F3. It stands for Fitness, Fellowship, and Faith. And it's kind of spreading across the US and into other places as well. But it's basically a bunch of guys get together at the crack of dawn in the morning. One of those men creates some kind of workout and they work out for 45 minutes to an hour. There's no gym equipment, it's always outdoors, so you don't need to, be indoors with gym equipment and jump ropes and barbells and all that stuff. We actually use a cinder block as our weight. So this morning we did it was called deck of death or cards of death. I can't remember exactly, but we were flipping playing cards. So if you flipped say 10 of hearts, you would do 10 push-ups. If you flipped the 6 of diamonds, you'd do 6 overhead presses with the cinder block, and so on and so forth. I think we went on for a good 30 minutes. I wasn't even watching the clock, but it's an amazing workout. And it's free. It's for all men, and it's honestly a hoot. And then there's the funnest part of it. Honestly, the working out is great, but the funnest part of it is the camaraderie, because we all get a nickname. When you come to the group and you survive your first workout, they give you receive a nickname from the rest of the group, and usually that'll be, tell me an embarrassing story about yourself, or um, in my case, it's the the name they gave me was Bronco, which is my college, um, the college that I went to. It's our arch rival is the Broncos. So they gave me the name Bronco, and it's the reason behind giving you the name is so that when you walk into the circle and introduce yourself, every time you get there, that it's a humbling experience. You have to tell this name, and a lot of times people ask you the story behind it, and yeah, it's it's my arch rival, and it's because obviously it's meant to keep your ego in check. And men, we have very big egos, and sometimes you walk into a situation like that, and you want to try to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, but you can't do 50 push-ups in a row, and you just have to kind of humble yourself, and you do what you can do. Obviously, we're not professionals, so we don't want to hurt ourselves. Um, so you got to kind of be smart about what you're doing, especially when you're over 50 like I am. But it's a great experience. And it's something I learned about a couple months ago, and then I found out that they have these little areas all over the states. From actually it started in the Carolinas and it's spread everywhere pretty much. But actually, the funny part is we even had two men this morning um, that were traveling into the area here of Michigan I live in. One was from Illinois and one was from Indiana, I think. I don't, I something somewhere not too far away, but far enough away where they were on vacation with their families, and they looked up because there's a national database of these groups. They looked up that we had one here, and they came and worked out with us. So, and they're going to come again on Saturday too, because they're going to be here all week. So, it's just saying that. So if I was to go to, the Carolinas or Texas or anywhere else in the country, I can look up and see if there's a group that's operating near where I'm going to be, and I could go there in the morning and work out with the group, and it's
Excellent.
all free. So
Cool.
it's a hoot.
So it's F3, and what does the stand for again?
Fitness, fellowship, and faith.
Okay, so it's a Christian organization.
It's actually not a Christian organization. It's faith is meant to be, you believe in something bigger than yourself.
Okay.
Not necessarily Christian God or Muslim God, Muslim God or any, it could be any of the above. It could be all of the above, whatever, as long as you have a faith in a higher power. Well, you don't have to either, but it's part of it, because at the end we have what we call a circle of trust. Um, and a lot of times, because it is heavily weighted to Christian men. It's more of the attraction of Christian men, but men will quote scripture, and they'll pray for the group and pray for whatever, and take prayer requests and things like that at the end. So there's a heavy, depending on the person in that group. It could be heavy, it could be light, it could be whatever, but it's not definitely, it's not like exclusive.
Yeah, that sounds cool. So you bring one cinder block along and you share it as you go
Yeah.
around the group. Yeah.
Cinder block and a sturdy pair of gloves, because if you've ever picked up or lifted or hugged around it, done this with a cinder block, it will chew your hands up pretty bad. So yeah, pair of gloves and a cinder block and a couple of Gatorades, and
Yep.
I'm good to go.
Yeah, you'd want a sturdy cinder block, because if you had one that was half cracked, you start lifting it above your head and she breaks
Well,
in
no,
half.
actually, I've learned to, I'm trying to get smarter, right? Because I kind of, sometimes I drop the cinder block a little harder than I probably should, because we do it, the workouts on the pavement too. So little pieces break off, and I figure every little piece that breaks off is just a little bit lighter.
Yeah, you need
Bust
to, you
off
need,
some corner. I want to get my corners nice and rounded.
yeah, you need to put some resin on it or something so it doesn't break
Yeah,
up. Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah. That sounds like an excellent
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a hoot. It's a lot of fun. Again, it's just one of those. It's just another way. And funny, a man showed up at our church a couple weeks ago, looking for ways to connect with other men. And I said, hey, yeah, we got this workout group. Come on out. And he's in pretty good shape. Actually, he's former military. I think he was in the army, and he fit right in. He came out and because it's a very military-esque workout. Um, we count in cadence and things like that, and do a lot of the type of things I'm sure he probably did in military or boot camp or whatever. So he fit right in, and it worked out great, and it gives him a place to get connected with other guys.
yeah, that's great.
So
Yeah, and I haven't
it's a
heard of
blessing in that regard.
yeah, haven't heard of F3 here. We've got F45, which is a franchise gym, and I don't know what that stands for, but
Yeah, I think that's just that's more. I think we have those here in the States too. I think that's just a gym
yeah,
franchise, like
yeah,
like CrossFit or
yeah,
Burn Boot Camp or whatever. But yeah, F3, it's a grassroots thing. I mean, they sell merch and things like that. There's a national board and things like that, but
oh wow,
it's pretty lax. And they they have very few rules that you have to follow. And just it's basically just a bunch of guidelines that say, hey, do it this way because it's fun and it works and people show up. So
Yeah, excellent. And so you do, that's something you've joined in, but you actually like have instigated and got you get men together formally, sort of like in a coaching scene, or in a, how do you do that?
I created a men's group about 5 years ago. Um, we meet every other week and we get together. We teach a little bit, something like a life skill, um, or ask some hard questions as far as on a subject matter that's important to men. And then we do what we call breakouts. So there's usually 20 to 25 men show up. Um, we break into smaller groups and then we just discuss whatever the topic was, or you could talk about whatever you want to talk about if you're having trouble in your marriage or you're having trouble at work or something you just need to get it off your chest. It gives men a great forum to get those things out in the open. And one of my firm beliefs is that shame shrivels in the sunlight. So if you've got something you're fighting, something you're struggling with, to get it out in the presence of other people, it lessens the impact that it has on you as a man and to be able to function and be your best.
Yeah. Can you just repeat that you just said? Shame, what does it do?
Shame shrivels in the sunlight.
Shame shrivels in the sunlight. I love that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I made that. I feel like I saw it somewhere, but I can't find now where I saw it or what. I think I just made it up.
Yeah.
So you can quote me on it. And if somebody ever calls me out that say they invented it first,
Maybe
but it's one
your
of my favorite things because I know a lot of men struggle with that.
yeah, maybe your intuition gave it to you.
Hey, maybe it did. I'm,
Yeah.
I mean, if I did make it up, I'm sure that's where it came from, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it came from somewhere. Yeah. Excellent. Cool. Cool.
Reading too many books.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, do you believe that you maybe chose to be born here on Earth at this time for any particular reason, or
Oh yeah,
yeah?
yeah. I mean, obviously, like I said, my kids are both actually they're both currently in medical school. They're both pursuing, careers as doctors. So, um, my daughter, I'm not sure what area she's going to go into yet, but my son's pretty heavy into research and um, is actually getting a dual. Um, he's getting a doctor of osteopathic medicine and a PhD at the same time.
Wow.
So he's yeah, he's amazing. He wants it all, and so yeah, that is just the first part of my legacy. Of course, is that the second part is every man that's come through my group, men becoming better men. Every man I've coached to this point, even people I just talked to. I mean, I primarily work with men, but I talk to women too, on occasion. And when I can give somebody a good tip that um, shifts their life basically, um, shifts their mindset from something that it was to something that it could be, to think that it could be. I think I have a lot of pebbles in the pond in that regard, and I'm pretty excited with the way my life has unfolded over the last 10 years since I went through my divorce. And like I said, when I don't have a lot of fears right now. And if I was to get hit by a car tomorrow, I I think I'd walk up to the pearly gates and say, hey, I did everything you asked me to do. I'm pretty happy. I hope you're happy with what I did because I'm pretty happy with it. Um, and that I've touched. I feel like I've touched a lot of people, and
Yeah.
and that's really what to me that's what it's all about is helping your fellow man get a little better. Doesn't matter, 1% better every day is my goal, and that's what I try to instill that belief in men that that's all you got to do. You don't have to go from 0 to 60, just 1% every day. Just get a little bit better, a little bit stronger, a little bit smarter, a little bit wiser, a little bit more intuitive.
Yeah. So when did you really start to have that realization that you were here for a purpose?
Ooh, that's a good story, actually. I went well, I was kind of already on the path, and I was doing the work, both in myself and in my educational side of, learning how to be a coach. But I went to I'll call it a seminar for lack of a better term. But it was a men's seminar. They called the men's weekend. Um, and there was a lot of great information that was provided in the context of that weekend. We're technically we're sworn to secrecy. It was in 2019, so um, I don't know what repercussions they have, but if I tell this story too much. But anyway, a part of a segment of that particular weekend, there was an extra. I'll be kind of vanilla with it, but there was an exercise we were doing that was meant to be a healing exercise, and was basically they gave, through the context of the first day or so, they gave men a lot of things to think about, and it was kind of one of those breaking point parts of a seminar that where you kind of get if you had something pent up inside you, you get so emotionally kind of clued into what's going on and what impact that's having in your life through all this other information they're providing. It was kind of like men were just blowing it out right there in the middle of the conference room. And there was one man in particular. He was laying on the floor, just bawling his face off, crying, wailing, like like demons were coming out of him. Almost kind of like that visualization of it. And I just intuitively, here's the answer to your other question too, by the way. Intuitively, I put my hands on this man as he's laying on the floor, and I just sat there with him. And I remember getting a very strong feeling, voice, whatever you want to call it, intuition, Holy Spirit, tell me that you're here doing this right now, and doing it with in the context of the rest of the, what you've been doing, whether it's the group or your coaching or whatever, to help men heal, to help men that are hurting somehow heal. And that's kind of been my mission since that was December of 2019. It was kind of my confirmation that I'm going down the right road. I'm doing the right thing. This is what God wants me to do, is to, in some way, shape, or form, whether it's just walking alongside or asking challenging questions or providing a resource, whether it's a book or a podcast or something like that, hey, man, you should really listen to this because it's got some good things that might help you. And that's what I try to do.
Awesome. Yeah, so it's great that like, I mean, you defined it down to not just the week, the day, the month, but the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, the moment. Oh, it was a very profound moment in my life that was just like, I mean, there was probably well, there was one other one, probably two, that I can think of off the top of my head. I was listening to a book one day, um, Wild at Heart by John Eldridge. And I was actually running. I was training for a half marathon. Actually, it was also in 2019, around that same period of time. And I was running, and something in the book, he was talking about fathers and sons, and the wounds of, the wounds of the father, and how those things impact us. And I remember jogging along, and I was actually in Tennessee. My wife and I were on vacation. I was in Tennessee and I was running, and I remember just wanting, I didn't do it because I thought it would be really weird, but I remember wanting to just stop running and fall to my knees in this front yard of this house that I was running in front of. And just, it was so amazing that to hear that, and that it was common for men to have a father wound, something that they were probably holding, something their father did that they're holding against their father and being resentful for it or shameful for it or whatever. And That was another profound moment where I was just like, wow, like that just happened. And I got, again, more clarity on my whole situation and why I was being who I was being back then versus who I'm becoming now.
Yeah. And I guess with having those realizations like that, it helps with imposter syndrome. Like
Yeah.
if you ever get self-doubts, it's like, well,
Yeah.
you could start to have a pity party and feel sorry for yourself, like, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm kidding myself. And then it's like it's like those because that moment was so real, it's easy for the Holy Spirit or the universe or whatever to like bring that moment back to you, that memory. It's like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
What
And
about
every time you get one of those, it's just, again, it's the clarity of like, oh, okay, so that's why I've felt this way or thought this way, or that's why I have this mental block or this, self-sabotaging behavior that I do because I keep doing the same things over and over again because I haven't resolved this particular issue.
Yeah. I hear them. So I'm curious now, I've got a reasonably big question for you. If your microphone was connected to all 8.1 billion people who are on the planet right now, and you knew they wouldn't judge, blame, or shame you for anything you said, what would you say to all those people on the planet right now?
Is this thing on?
Testing. It's on, mate. It's
Funny
on. They're all
considering we
listening.
had the little audio issue at the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah.
What would I say? We asked a similar question. This in my men's group was, what if you had a giant billboard, what would you put on it? And I haven't answered that question in a long time. I haven't thought about it. No matter how unloved you feel, whether it's from your parents or your spouse or your children or whatever, any human person, no matter how unloved you feel, God will always, always love you. And that was straight from him because I didn't think of that. That just popped out of my mouth.
Yeah, excellent. So you tapped into some other invisible force.
Yes, sir.
That likes you and me and everyone else, all the other 8.1 billion people.
He loves us dearly, and he wants us all to be part of his kingdom and his family.
Yeah, excellent. So I will have your contact information in the show notes and things like that. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you'd like to talk about before we go?
Yeah, I just released last week a new ebook that I'm offering. It's a free ebook, free resource on my website. My website is menbecomingbettermen.com. The book itself is called 5 Blatant Lies That Most Men Believe About Themselves and What to Do About It.
Wow, powerful sounding book. Excellent.
Yes.
So we'll send me a link to that, because like you say, it was well over a month ago when we first connected. And in the stuff you sent me, that if the link's not
you just go to my website. You just go to my website.
Great.
There's a link. There's a upper right hand corner of my website says free ebook. You click that and follow the process.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll have that in the show notes for people who want to get that free resource. And excellent. And thank you for your time, Bob. It's been enlightening and enjoyable, and I hope some of the things you've shared resonate with the men who are listening and help make their lives a little simpler, and they can I'm sure someone will relate to some of the things you've shared. So thank you.
I mean, we've all got things. We just, again, it's finding a way through them, finding some clarity, and then being able to move on and move through it.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bob. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, we're at the end of another thought-provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever-reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition. It will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.